Welcome back, my little subscribers. Today I'm doing a follow-up video on this beast of a lens, the 35-150mm F2-2.8 by Rokinon or Samyang. Stick around. So if you see my previous video, I was really excited about this lens. I think the main reason is because the only other lens that is similar is the Tamron, and that one is still retailing for $1,800, $1,900, around there, plus taxes, and maybe more depending on where you live. So that's a pretty revolutionary lens to me because you can go from 35, which is very documentary, to 150, where you're just getting portrait, telephoto, just making the subject pop away from the background, making everything disappear. So the fact that you get that much versatility is amazing in one lens. But that lens was sold out for months and months and months. I remember being on the wait list, wanting to use it for a wedding and just not being able to get it. So I ended up giving up and using alternatives, which also work, but I kept wanting to come back to this lens because of the versatility. And like I said in my previous video, 35-150, you're getting so many different looks in one lens without having to change it. So you can just run and gun, you can be ready for any situation. You are getting it at the 35 range, but you're not getting anything less than f2, like 1.4 or 1.2, 1.8, you name it. But because you can have that versatility, I think that makes this lens very valuable. Now, I think the decision to make the 35 f2 was really smart. That makes this lens stand out a lot more than if the whole range would have been 2.8. And I still think people would have wanted it, but I think f2 to 2.8 makes it even more attractive. I saw a lot of comments below on my previous video, and I know some people have not had good experiences with Samyang or Rokinon. It's the same company. So I wanted to address that. So first, I know that they do have issues with quality control here and there. And by that, I mean the copies are not always the same. So sometimes you're going to get the perfect straight out of the box lens. And other times you might get some issues with sharpness, focusing, and whatnot. So of course they have their updating dongle, so to say, where you connect the lens and you update it, you can refine it yourself. So that is really how they try to address those issues when it comes to focusing and sharpness, because it may be a firmware issue that just didn't click on that copy. But I don't know, I mean, I'm not speaking for them. I just know that they do have issues here and there. I personally have never had an issue with a Rokinon or Samyang lens, and I've used them since they were manual focus lenses only. Those were my only options before. And now that I'm using the autofocus versions, I haven't really had any issues. I think the only one I would complain about was when I used the 85-1.4, their first version. I would say that one wasn't at the level that I expected it personally. It was pretty slow to focus, and got a lot of yellow tinting where there wasn't. Some people might like it, but for me it wasn't working. When it comes to this lens, I don't have a lot of complaints. I've been using it for a couple of months now, and I've gotten to shoot photo shoot. I've done a photo shoot for portraiture, so I got to test out those different looks. I mainly used it at 150 because I wanted to make it different from my other lens, but I'll show you some samples. And I also took it to the zoo, and this is where I would take, I've said it in other videos, whenever I want to test a lens for its speed and autofocusing and tracking, and its image quality and pixel peeping sharpness, I take it to the zoo. Because at the zoo, I have different situations with different lighting, animals that move and behave differently. So they'll move quickly, some will move slowly. It's very reactive, and you don't know what's going to be available to you when you go to the zoo. So I like testing things that way. It makes me feel like I am hunting, not that I encourage hunting because I love these animals, but in a way, I am trying to test the limits of a lens in those different scenarios. And because the zoo has all this variety with different lighting and what I just said, it makes it the perfect playground for me. So I took this lens and I was very impressed. I took several photos, I took several videos in high quality 4K, so I'll go ahead and show you those. So as you can see, these photos and these videos look crisp. And of course, it depends on your editing style to correct for lighting and shadows and all that thing. But at the end of the day, I think this lens has been delivering for me. I have no issues with the autofocusing or the sharpness. I took several test shots with video at 4K and not at 4K, 120 and 60p. I've been very happy with the results so far, shooting in log, not shooting in log. I just haven't seen anything that's slowing me down with this lens. I think the autofocus is excellent, and it may just be it got a really good copy, but I encourage you to not give up on this lens. If you're willing to give it another try, I'd say if you get a bad copy, just return it, try with a new one. And because a lot of the stores that we buy from have such good return policies, I think you got to take advantage of that, because I think this lens is worth it. And there might not be that many bad copies. I feel like, I mean, obviously when there's bad copies, it's not good. But overall, I mean, I think it's worth the risk to try again and see if you can get a good copy, because it's just a game-changing lens. I think it's I think it is my favorite zoom lens I've ever used. And I love 70 to 200s. I love super zooms. I mean, this is way out of that range. But for a zoom lens that I can just feel like I can capture everything. I feel like when I used to use the 70 to 200, there were many situations where I wanted to get a shot that's closer, and 70 is already a little bit limiting. We're getting close to the 85 point of view where you do need a little bit more space. When you can go down to 35, it's just amazing that you can just, and it doesn't look like it when you look at the zoom lens. It's amazing. I really like it. You can really diversify your shots and capture everything. So I encourage you to try this lens. I hope you enjoyed the samples. I worked a lot on those. It had taken a while to really test the lens and be like, you know what, are there actually autofocus issues? And so far I haven't found any. I don't plan on updating my lens. I don't believe in jumping into firmware updates if everything is working. If I did notice something, I would update it, but in this case, because I'm seeing mixed reviews about it, I'm just gonna leave it alone. It's working fine with my A7 IV with its current firmware. I haven't tested it out on my A7C, I gotta do that. But on my A7 IV, I haven't even updated that to the latest firmware. I wanna keep things working the same. I don't wanna mess with anything. So that's just my point of view, my perspective. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back with more. And in case you were wondering, since I'm talking so much about Rokinon and Samyang and the deal that they offer, the value that they offer, I'm actually shooting this on a new lens. This is the 24mm F2-2.8 from Samyang. And the reason I got this was I wanted to test out what it felt like to shoot in comparison to shooting with the G Master 24-1.4, which is substantially more expensive. So, will I notice a difference? Will I care about that difference? Stick around and I'll make another review for that one. Thanks.